Returning to federal politics, the Coalition has recorded its worst ever primary vote in today's Newspoll in The Australian. Joining me live now is political analyst at The Australian, Simon Benson. How did it get so bad for the opposition? Is this the floor or could it still go lower?
Thanks for having me on, Trudy. We were asking this same question 2 months ago when they hit 29%. So it is a good question to still ask. Is this rock bottom? Who knows? Without straying into hyperbole, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it's absolutely disastrous for the Coalition. It's certainly not the direction they want to be going in. To put it in some context, Newspoll have been polling primary vote since 1985 for the major parties. So it's the lowest on record since then at 27%. But it's safe to say that you could go back another 40 years before that, and it's the lowest since the party was formed in 1944. It's not a surprise, considering most of what it's done is talk about itself rather than offer a credible alternative as an opposition. And I think there would be a feeling that the party is once again ignoring the base, and we saw that with the actions against Jacinta Price last week. That will have annoyed a lot of people in the party.
But how much, I've seen Liberal MPs out today saying, it was a messy week last week, that explains this bad poll, but the trend is not the Coalition's friend here.
No.
How much to blame for the price factor last week? How much is structural Coalition issues now?
Look, I think the price factor is significant, and the correlation with that is Susan Lee's satisfaction rating going down significantly, so tie those two things together. Look, to put it in another context, 27% of voters say they support the Coalition, 37% now support minor parties or independents. That's a significant problem. Interestingly, that's even higher than Labor supporters at 36%. So there's a broader trend at play here that we've been seeing for quite some time, this de-alignment from the major political parties, which frankly began in the late 80s and sort of gone through three phases. And we're now in this third phase, which is quite acute. And it's the Coalition now that are suffering, whereas in the 90s and early 2000s, it was Labor that had the problem. It's now the Coalition's problem. Look, this poll will do one of two things. It will either sharpen their minds to the problem or it will just deepen the divisions further. And
what's your assessment on kind of this twin issue that the Coalition faces? It's losing votes on its right to one nation, and on the other hand, you have moderates saying if we don't pivot back to the centre, we'll never win back those seats that the Teals now occupy. How difficult is that as a task to manage?
Oh, very difficult, and both things can be true at the same time. And you rightly point out, since the election, all of that primary vote, 90% of that primary vote from the Coalition has gone into the One Nation column. One Nation's now at 10%, which is quite extraordinary. I mean, that's double what the Nationals you'd expect to be at. So all of that vote's gone to One Nation. This happened the last time we had a moderate leader in charge of a party that tries to bridge that gap between liberalism and conservatism. I mean, it just sort of shows that underlying it all, those two things are largely incompatible. But you need a strong leader to be able to bridge that and to marry it together. And at the moment, I think the party is suffering from a lack of strong leadership. That may change under Susan Lee, but they're going to have to get a wriggle on.
You reflected in your column today about, in times of Coalition opposition, they've often cycled through a lot of leaders. It was fairly stable under Peter Dutton, you'd have to say. It didn't translate to any better result. What do you make of that echoes of history yesterday, that anniversary of Turnbull rolling Abbott again? How does that all factor in here?
Look, I did make that point, and I think it's a relevant one, that the longest period of opposition for the Coalition was obviously between 83 and 96, and they had 6 leadership changes through 4 different leaders, obviously, too. But that's something that that will be going through their minds of how long will they be in opposition for. And it's hard to say because there are so many different factors now. You've got the independents and minor party vote is so high compared to the 80s and 90s. But on the other side of the ledger, Labor's primary vote at 36% seems to have hit a bit of a ceiling. So, if I was Labor, I'd be sort of concerned about where that goes from here too. There's a lot of scope for that to come off. And now you see Anthony Albanese's satisfaction levels have come back into negative territory again. So it's a bit of a pox on both leaders. And I think in the midst of all this chaos on the coalition side and the Prime Minister being interested in everything foreign at the moment, they've lost sight of the fact that cost of living is still the primary issue that is concerning most people. And while they're not focused on that, they both suffer.
Yeah, fascinating always. Simon Benson, thanks for your time.